Rumors had been spreading for weeks in Palermo about a strange instrument assembled in a modest laboratory behind the University of Palermo's physics department. And the name everyone whispered with equal parts reverence and dread was Ettore Majorana. It was March 1938, and Italy's weather felt as brittle as its politics. Majorana, the brilliant and reclusive theoretical physicist who had worked alongside Enrico Fermi in Rome and Naples, had vanished from public life before. Now, neighbors said, he had returned with a box of papers and a prototype that could not be reduced to ordinary mathematics. Contemporary police reports, many later redacted, place Majorana in Palermo for a week. Local fishermen in the harbor of Palermo told magistrates they saw strange interference on their radio sets and a shimmering over the water, an effect like heat shimmering but cold to the eyes on the night a coastal launch approached the breakwater. One logbook entry, preserved in a naval archive and stamped confidential, records that a small launch named Santa Lucia experienced an instrument failure and that 3 minutes of its odometer records were blanked out. That same page was cut from later photocopies. Enrico Fermi's private correspondence, sent to colleagues of the University of Rome, but not widely published until decades later, mentions a theory Majorana had entertained: localized cancellations of quantum phase, a way to force electrons into a matched, self-annihilating configuration across a bounded region. He called it, in playful shorthand, the envelope. The science reads like fevered extrapolation today, but the documents show plans: a ring of copper, layered crystals, and a lattice of mercury and salt tuned to a precise frequency, arranged to induce what Majorana labeled a topological null. He believed it might, briefly, reduce macroscopic interaction between matter and classical measurement, essentially a way to hide an object from being observed. On the night Palermo remembers, there were at least 3 competing accounts. The device was powered in a converted stables at the edge of the university grounds. One account comes from an oven maker, Pietro Conti, whose son insisted he had seen their kitchen clock stop and then jump forward 15 minutes. Another is a report from a fascist prefect's aide who wrote that 2 men in naval uniforms and one in a dark suit demanded the laboratory's keys and took a trunk of papers. A third, found in a British naval intelligence dispatch declassified in the 1970s, records that a small craft scheduled to sail to Naples reported a momentary spatial anomaly near Capo Gallo, and that the ship's radar returned a null for 4 minutes before reappearing on course. No definitive evidence ties the missing trunk or the naval interference to a successful demonstration. Yet signatures and postmarks show that by April 1938, copies of Majorana's last notebook had been forwarded surreptitiously, according to the paper trail, to 3 places: La Sapienza in Rome, the Accademia dei Lincei archives, and oddly, a newly opened office of the Italian Navy in Genoa. Post-war investigators would discover a redacted page in a Genoa file that mentioned field suppression and temporal decoupling. That redaction has fueled conspiracy theories ever since, that Majorana had built a primitive cloaking field, or worse, that he had used it to disappear. Or perhaps the truth is less cinematic. Majorana's name recurs in wartime telegrams exchanged between Italian and British intelligence, where he is discussed like contraband, too dangerous to be left in any single archive. After 1945, several of his notebooks surfaced in odd places: in the personal papers of naval engineers, in an American Naval Institute catalog, and in the hand of a translator working for the OSS. It looks like the physics, whatever its limits, attracted the attentions of militaries that understood the power of controlling detection. In 2013, a young historian, Dr. Maria Esposito of the University of Palermo, discovered thin brass plates and a fragment of lattice wiring in a private estate sale. Her radiography found sub-microscopic alterations to the metal surface consistent with exposure to intense electromagnetic gradients. She published cautiously. Scientists responded with skepticism. Still, the combination of eyewitness testimony, redacted files, and scattered artifacts makes a disquieting narrative that in 1938, in Palermo, a physicist's obscure thought experiment intersected with naval curiosity and state secrecy, producing an event the official record preferred to erase.
The Majorana Envelope is now a chapter in conspiracy histories, recounted at conferences, whispered in taverns, and indexed in the same vaults that hold wartime memos. Whether Majorana's work ever achieved anything like true invisibility is uncertain. What is certain is that a handful of papers, a broken ring of copper, and the missing minutes on a ship's log have kept the question alive. How often have ordinary nights been edited out of history simply because governments and scientists agreed to hide what they could not fully explain?